our solve over here, let's go ahead and output a scene plus. And what this is going to do is it's actually going to undistort our shot ever so slightly because there wasn't that much distortion on the shot to begin with. What we're going to want to do is find roughly where this area is in like kind of like depth wise from the camera. I'm going to say let's create a card. I'm going to throw that card onto our scene. And now if we go view our scene, I can see our card. I'm going to throw a texture onto it real quick. So if we just throw a checkerboard onto our card, we can see what we're doing here. If we double click our card, we can change the total scale of this. So I'm going to make this quite a bit smaller. And it looks like I made this too high in the air. So we'll just move that down, roughly position this on the y-axis accordingly to the gun. But if we go to our project settings, I believe 24 frames per second is correct here, but we want to change our file format size to something like 1920 by 1080 because that is what our input source is for our shot. That does a few things for us. All the auto settings of like what the root format is, it automatically sets that correctly, as well as when I go to our scanline renderer here, the first thing I'm going to want to do is select the BG here, so that way our card is over alpha. And then on top of that, we'll just add a merge node in now. And if we plug this merged B input into the lens distortion node that we have there, now it's going to do the same thing as if we just had this selected on BG, but now we're going to have the alpha of all of our cards. It should feel like it's really grounded into the shot, and it does, you know, because we got a good camera track. But now that's floating in that space right where we want that smoke to exist. But if we go to frame 1018 here, we can now drop in some kind of card into our shot. With our shot here, we're going to want to add in some smoke. So let's go look at some of these assets again. Now we can just drag that over into our scene. And now we could go ahead and change the input transform to the correct color space. We're going to want that on our card. But instead of just dragging this directly onto our card like so, we're going to project it onto the card. So firstly, let's go ahead and make the scale of this card super big so it encompasses the entire shot here, and that way we're not clipping any edges. And then secondly, I'm going to merge this onto the original footage here. We just kind of need to line everything up, so I'm going to also grab the time offset here to make sure that the time offset starts at frame 1017. And now if we go ahead and add a transform on, if we go drop this into our shot here, oh, and again, we're gonna need to select our transform, find the area in which the smoke is starting. This just makes it a lot easier to do this. And now let's go ahead and we'll have our transform here, and now we can move this to wherever we want in our shot. This is the beginning of our smoke field, so let's go ahead and just drop that in like so. I'm gonna kind of get the angle, because the angle does matter in which it's coming out, because it's gotta feel like force from where it's doing that. What we're going to want is probably to use something like an O-flow. And let's change the speed here to like a 1.7. See what that looks like. And for this frame here, we're going to want our offset. We'll just adjust our offset again real quick. Probably there. And so now if we go ahead and line up our transform to that, angle this a little bit better to like how the gun is positioned here. And that'll be good. Okay, for our camera, we're going to make sure we're doing this on frame 1017, since this is where we are lining everything up with our transform and our merge node. We're going to delete our merge node. Okay, guys, follow along here. Camera tracker, copy, paste it, and don't change your frame. We're going to say no animation on this camera tracker. And then we go ahead and add in a project 3D, again, using a classic. We're going to make sure that's going into our card here, and camera is selected on camera. So now, if we go ahead and move this over to our gun smoke, it's essentially going to be projecting this gun smoke on this frame as if it were this angle right here. So that way, if the camera's moving in like any other angle, we're going to see some warping happening. Luckily for us, it's not. The camera's not rotating or anything like that, but it's going to be projecting this gun smoke as if it was like merging it onto the frame, onto the card, only on this frame. And then since this is not animated, it's going to, now the card's going to move with the scene. And since it's moving with the scene, it's going to move with our shot. And that's perfectly how we want it. So now if we go ahead and go view our gun smoke add-on here, the other thing we're going to notice is that we're going to get a little bit of clipping here. And the reason why that's clipping is because under our project 3D, it says crop. So we're going to unselect that crop, and then that way we're making sure that it's not going to crop on our shot. So first things first, we've got like a window